Spring Boot provides strong support for developers building web applications. The Spring framework has always placed an emphasis on web development, and this tradition is continued within Spring Boot. Primarily, Spring Boot supports web development by focusing on making Spring MVC features more accessible and by helping us define the configuration of embedded servlet containers. In this chapter, we'll explore how Spring Boot can help you unlock powerful features within these areas. So let's take a look at what we'll be covering within this chapter. First, we're going to take a look at all of the auto configuration provided by Spring Boot within the web arena. Now, most developers take this for granted because it is so easy to build out a web application with Spring Boot. Behind the scenes, many features or beans are configured for you, and we're going to explore those. That way, you can take advantage of all of the benefits provided to you through Spring Boot. Next, we'll take a look at how templating technologies can be used to construct our view layers and how Spring Boot supports their configuration and makes it easy to get started using a template technology such as Timeleaf or Velocity or FreeMarker. There's support for several different templating technologies. Particularly, we'll be looking at Timeleaf and Mustache. We'll also see how we can version our static resources in order to control caching. Now, this is traditionally a Spring MVC feature, but using Spring Boot makes it much simpler. Within Spring MVC, we would have to register some complex view resolvers to achieve this functionality, where you'll see within Spring Boot, it really boils down that configuration to a single line. We'll then shift our focus to looking at embedded servlet containers. So that's pretty much the standard when working with Spring Boot, is to include embedded Tomcat or embedded Jetty within your application. So you're packaging up into an executable jar file that will then be used as opposed to a standalone servlet container. You'll hear the expression make jar not war thrown around quite a bit within the Spring circles, and that's something they're heavily advocating for is moving to these embedded containers. So we'll take a look at how you can easily switch out your embedded container and how you can then provide some customizations for that container. It's very simple, you'll see within the customizations to change the way you connect to the server or the way it provides responses to a user. We'll see how we can use compression there, which is pretty interesting and very beneficial to us. We'll continue with a deep dive into embedded servlet containers and take a look at how we can register things like servlets, filters, and listeners with the actual container itself. And then finally, we'll see how we can programmatically configure an embedded container. Spring Boot provides us with several approaches that we'll explore if we would like to configure our container using good old Java code. So, in this chapter, we're going to learn a lot about how Spring Boot supports web development, and it's very extensive. The first bullet point, the auto configured features, are just such a large area, and often they're an oversight to us as developers, and it really demonstrates the power of Spring Boot.